You know, nobody was able to bring people together quite like my friend, the late Senator Lindsey Graham. Today was no exception. After today's service, I sat with someone who flew from the Middle East to be here, the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Mr. Prime Minister, great to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you.
I mentioned today during Lindsey's eulogy, we have known each other for 30 years. I can't believe it's been that long. You were reminding me of a steak dinner we once had many, many years ago.
I remember that. And, you know, like good wine, you've improved with age. But I have to say, the president gave an amazing speech. You gave an amazing speech.
Thank you.
And it was so moving in the Washington Cathedral because Lindsey Graham was a great American patriot, a great champion of the American-Israel alliance. And let me tell you, we lost a dear, dear friend. And he was, as you and the president described him, you know, he was just gloriously outrageous. He just said what he wanted to say. He was charmingly outrageous. He could use swear words and he could say it like it is. And you loved him.
You know, it's amazing. I think I'm accurate in saying this, that Lindsey was President Trump's closest friend in all of Congress. That means the House and the Senate. They played golf together. They talked together. They argued together. They had meals together. And they had a very special relationship. And it was open and it was honest. You know, the one thing that I said about Lindsey, and it's true, he was a staunch supporter of yours, a staunch supporter of Israel, a staunch supporter of the people of Israel. But he knew that evil exists in our time. And he and the president talked a lot about how to confront the evil of this moment.
Well, I can tell you that he spoke about it with me many times, and he was absolutely unapologetic and unabashed in supporting the American-Israel alliance because he believed that Israel's security and America's security were intertwined. And you got proof of that when we fought shoulder to shoulder against this murderous regime in Iran that chants death to America, death to Israel. And when we combine our forces and our brave soldiers, you know, nothing can stand in our way. And he believed that. And he just said it like it is. He couldn't care about the winds of fashion. He couldn't care about social media and all these bots that are used to try to, you know, play the American people for fools. He said, you have one real ally in the Middle East and in the world, Israel. It's your fighting ally. It's your model ally. And he just said it. And he couldn't, you know, he just didn't suffer fools.
History will judge the military relationship between Israel under Donald Trump, President Trump, and Israel under Prime Minister Netanyahu very favorably. I don't think the world's seen anything like it. And, you know, you met with the president today.
Yeah.
How'd that meeting go?
It was great. It was one of the best meetings that we've had. And I always hate to disappoint our would-be critics who are trying to find, you know, cracks in our alliance. And what they find, like today, is a wall of granite, you know, because the president is so clear. I mean, we have a common commitment. We don't want to see this fanatic regime in Tehran have nuclear weapons to threaten every American and to threaten the peace of the world and to threaten the existence of Israel. So we have a common goal, and it's going to be achieved either through diplomatic means or other means, but we're both committed to that. And that's the main headline that I would tell you from this meeting.
Do you believe that there are warring factions? Do you have hardliners and former loyalists to Ali Khamenei, the former supreme leader? And do you have more moderates? Do you believe there are moderates that would like a deal and a better Iran?
Well, I'm skeptical about the deal, and I say it openly, but the only way it would be achieved is if Iran understood these various factions. I think they're not ideological factions as much as they differ on the assessment of how tough we are. That's it. You know, those who think that the president is very tough, and they should, you know, they say, well, let's not confront this guy. And those who think, no, you know, we can play America, you know, they tend to be, they tend to be more demanding. But I think in the end, it's our resolve. It's our common resolve to make sure that Iran doesn't get nuclear bombs to threaten every American with. And I think the president is absolutely straight on this. And I really deeply respect him for that.
It seems like every time a deal seems somewhat imminent, those hardliners come in and they want to muddy up those waters and prevent that deal from ever happening. They'll attack ships in the Strait of Hormuz. They'll attack other countries in your region of the world, in the Middle East. They'll just find some way to muddy the waters. While I believe that the Iranian regime and the hardliners are evil, I don't believe they're stupid. They know you have an election. They know we have a midterm election. Why do I believe in my heart that they factor that in?
Well, if they do or not, they should know that if we are attacked, we'll respond with terrific force.
They've left you out of the last round of attacks.
Yeah.
Any reason, any theory why?
Because of what I just said. Because of what I've just said. But I'll tell you one other thing. Look at this regime today. It's attacking everybody in sight. It's attacking Saudi Arabia. It's attacking Kuwait. It's attacking Bahrain. It's attacking the UAE and others. It's attacking everything in sight, and it murdered and maimed tens of thousands of its own citizens. This is what this regime in Iran does today when it doesn't have nuclear weapons. Now imagine what they will do to the world if they had nuclear weapons. And that's what we have to make sure that we prevent. And I think we're so clear-minded about it. And I just respect our alliance and the common cause that we pursue. And I had to disappoint people who are looking for, who are looking for divisions among us, because the president and I see this eye to eye very strongly.
Sounds like a good meeting today.
It was.
I'm going to skip around a little bit because I'm going to tape a little bit more for the podcast. The International Criminal Court, you don't recognize it. We don't recognize it. Personally, I find a lot of these international organizations to be useless. The UN, I think, has been historically anti-American and anti-Semitic. I don't believe in the WEF. I'm not a fan of the Paris Accords, any of these globalist organizations. And they don't have any authority. And you've got this lunatic mayor in New York thinking you may get arrested if you go to New York, which will never happen.
First of all, I'm going to New York.
Yeah.
I'd love to see you there when I go to the UN in September.
You know, I moved to Florida.
Well, you can take a plane.
I'll come up, yes.
You can come. You've come to Washington, so you can go there. But I'm definitely going there. I'm going to speak the truth in front of this. There's just hate-spewing elected official who's pitting one group of New Yorkers against the others. He's turning them against New York Jews. I mean, what are we, in the 1930s? What is this, So much hate, so many lies. And the big lie is about the ICC, the International Criminal Court, so-called. That's a corrupt, evil organization. It had a prosecutor who issued arrest warrants against me and our former defense minister as war criminals, supposedly for starvation, starving the people of Gaza. We gave 1 million tons of food for them, but he decided to do that. And we didn't know. Why did he do that? He was going to come to Israel, and he said, we shouldn't rush to judgment. Israel has an independent judiciary. And then, bam, on the day that he's supposed to come, he cancels the visit. We didn't know why. Turns out that a few days before that, his chief of staff said, there's this female member, employee of yours, that is going to charge you with sexual assault. And this corrupt prosecutor, his name is Karim Khan, he decided the only way he's going to get out of this is to do, forgive the expression, to do a con job on the international community. Let me bash Israel. Let me cancel my visit, cancel all the good things I said about Israel's judicial capacity, and let's be careful about rushing to judgment. Rush to judgment, accuse the Prime Minister of Israel with war crimes, and that way I'll be protected by the anti-Israel crowd that populates the international court and a lot of these international institutions. Well, guess what happened? Another female employee came out, also charged him with sexual assault, and he's been removed, he's been fired. So he thought, you know, if I issue these charges, I'll be safe. Well, he issued the charges and he's not safe. But it still shows you how corrupt,
it's corrupt.
How corrupt and how vile this international court is.
But it scares me in this sense for you. You travel internationally.
Yep.
God forbid you had a medical emergency and you need to land. And you're about to land in a country that recognizes the ICC. It could complicate things. Do you worry about that?
Yeah, I think about it. You know, we have
we
have special forces around. You know, I served them for 5 years.
No, the IDF is pretty tough. They have a very tough reputation.
Let's give them a new task. You know, yeah, of course. It's the corruption of the international system. It's an unelected bureaucracy that sits in The Hague that could arrest American soldiers because you don't recognize this corrupt body any more than we do. And they could say that the President of the United States is a war criminal, that American soldiers valiantly fighting next to us, shoulder to shoulder against the tyranny in Tehran, that they're war criminals. They could pick them up.
The 45,000 dead Iranians that were killed by the Iranian leadership, were they ever charged?
No, of course not. They don't charge them. They don't charge Hezbollah. They don't charge all these other terror programs. Yeah, supposedly they charge Hamas, but a guy who's already dead.
Yeah.
You know. So no, it's fake. It's one big fake.
All right, thanks for watching. Check out my new podcast, Hanging Out with me, Sean Hannity. The big interviews, the debates you won't get anywhere else. Like and subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday.